Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining us here at UAS 101, the online version of UAS 101. It is a program designed to get UAV pilots compliant with the new Transport Canada regulations. I myself have been doing UAV instruction for since 2013, and all of those classes have been really focused in an in-class session. Now we are doing a online session and trying to see how that will work and fold out. But for the online session, we want to make sure that we cover all the ends as well. We do not want to cut any corners, but we want to make sure that the training standard is up to par. We never ever want to diminish the training standards for pilots, including ARPAs, UAV pilots as well. We want to have a good standard of training and of education so that everyone can benefit and we can all continue to grow in this exciting new industry and make sure everybody is safe as we do so. So the course content will take, I would say, 2 days for you to get through. And that is what the standard UAS 101 ground school is 2 days. And so please get comfortable, sit back, and take these notations. A lot of the things that we're covering will be on examination material, which will be done by Transport Canada. And so it's important that we cover it all. And as the instructor, I want to really make sure that we cut through and we get right to the points that we need to cover. All of this material is vetted. It's all been taught to the hundreds and hundreds of students that we have instructed in the past all over the country. So it is a proven model and it works. And so please feel free to interact and take down notes as we go along. Again, my name is David Carlos. I am the instructor. I am SFLC compliant. And have extensive experience, including over 1,500 hours of complex UAV flight time under my belt at this time. Probably about a quarter of that has been in the instructional context with other students. But the course material is valuable and it is there for everybody to learn from. And so my goal with this online training device is that it'll be a positive learning experience, and that the students who watch this and diligently pay attention to the material will come out of it with a not only able to pass the exam, which is Transport Canada requirement, but also be a better UAV pilot as we unfold this technology. Okay, so that's just an introductory to the course and to the objectives that we're trying to create here. So let's, on that note, move right along with our slides. For this day one, we will have an basic introduction to UAVs. What is the technology all about? Air law, what are the Canadian air regulations? What are the proposals? What are they looking to do versus what's in place right now with the Canadian air regulations? We'll look at what radio is and how it affects us in UAS. Flight theory, that's a big one. How does aircraft fly? We need to understand that, along with meteorology and air navigation. We'll go through those subjects all in day one, and then touch on air traffic control services and then human factors towards the end of the course. Okay, that's day one. Class number 2, or the module section number 2, we're going to go more specifically into multi-rotor studies, normal and operational checklists, emergency checklists, maintenance of the UAV. What does it look like for a maintenance protocol with UAVs? How do we keep up our aircraft and make them and be sure that they are airworthy before we fly them into airspace? We'll go through ATS, ATF, and MF, which are a lot of acronyms that we're going to learn throughout the course and that you can certainly learn in your book, Unmanned Air Studies, and we'll continue to go through those acronyms as we go along. AATS is aerodrome traffic frequency, and the MF is the mandatory frequency. Okay. UAV flight simulators, they have uses, but they also have limits. We'll look at that. Radio procedures. What is the means to talk on the radio that we have right here? How do we do that? Certification and so on. SFOC planning and communications. Security planning and operations. Having a security plan is something that we will go through in this course, and how to develop that properly. And then more about crew designations, pilot logbooks, and then payloads. So a lot of stuff for the Module 2 is more advanced, specific to the UAV and to the multi-rotor itself, whereas Day 1 is focused more on the basic ground school that all pilots have to take and have to understand. Okay. We at VAP also have a flight training program. That is something that we offer in-house in the course section as well. I have a designated practice area, as you can see in the middle there, which is actually a area in Class C control zone. But we have gained air traffic control authorization to use that space specifically for training students and for doing flight test reviews when they become a requirement in the future. So please, if you're interested in that, book that with me directly or with a group, and we can do the flight training module. Here's some of the changes that we have right now. These are the proposed changes, and they are going to be implemented and made public very shortly. And this material you can pull off the Transport Canada UAV site, or the ARPA's site. And we'll be talking about the definitions of these things as we go along as well. We can see there is a very small category. We can see there is a limited category, and then a complex category. My basic recommendation is everybody goes for the complex category, as it is the least restrictive and allows the UAV pilot or the business or corporation, whoever's doing research or hiring, to have a wider, broader range to operate. As we can see, there's very small drones up to 250 grams to 1 kilogram, small drone from 1 kilogram to 25 kilograms, and then the small drone more than 1 kilogram to 25 kilograms is the new envelopes that they are measuring UAVs in. The noteworthy changes are as follows. The passing a Transport Canada written test, which will be an online test, and I've been told will not be easy. It'll be covering a lot of the content that we're going to cover in this course, and it'll be a difficult test, but if you study, it will be easy to do. And then you will pass also a flight review by a designated flight reviewer. I will be one of those flight reviewers to test a student pilot's ability to control the aircraft. The simple logic with that is that if you can pass a written test, that's very good. Can you control a UAV in airspace? Can you problem solve when it comes to a UAV and its potential collision with an obstacle? Can you problem solve if there's a sudden low battery on your UAV and return to home function doesn't work, and so on and so on and so on. And so the flight review will be an opportunity for a reviewer to see that the student can fly the ARPAs, and also that the student knows situational awareness. So some of the practical material that is covered in the course may also be asked on the flight review portion of the examination as well. So just to prepare for that. We talked about the technology and the study of robotics and the definition of UAVs. What is the definition of them? They are drones, they're ARPAs, they're model aircraft. There's a huge variety of terminology for them. And what the difficulty is because the technology is so advanced that we can barely keep up with it. And we just touch on this briefly, but what we have is a technology explosion. And so there's a law called Moore's Law, which talks about the fact that the transistor or the dense integrated circuit will double in computing capacity approximately every 2 years. And so what that means for us in the drone world is that there'll be a UAV likely twice as capable than the ones we're flying right now in merely 2 years from now. So we plug that into the way we think, always understanding that technology is increasing and increasing. For example, this little quadcopter drone right here, which is something I recommend students practice on in terms of improving their flight skills, has more computation power than the entire United States Air Force in 1960. This one little integrated chip that is within this device right here, and this costs about $75. That is Moore's Law in action. That is a doubling of technology and a multiplication of it thereafter. And so as we look at this, we need to plug that into our business model and into our thinking concerning operating an aircraft that is 1 year old, 2 years old, versus one that is brand new. We're getting to a point where there's no comparison between the two now. So that's something to factor into our study as well. What are consumer drones and revenues and forecasts going to be looking like? And as you can see, they are not going away. We expect it to continue to rise and rise into the next several years, with huge forecasts of drone shipments and revenues from companies. So the UAVs are not going away. Drones are not going away. They're here to stay. And so we need to harness the technology responsibly and safely is the big one. And so that's what we're going to learn to do in this course. 3 keys to safe flight. Okay? Knowledge, experience, and equipment. And in this course, we're going to learn a little of each. But the knowledge section is what we're doing right now. Class, lectures, books, reading. It is the time that you'll spend reading books. It is the time that you'll spend online carousing information, and time you'll spend researching and reading owner's manuals and so on. Experience is what we would refer to as actual hands-on experience in a wide variety of settings. How many hours do you have on type? If even you've flown this thing, how many hours do you have flying this thing in an outside environment versus, say, an inside environment? How many hours do you have flying something like a Phantom, an Inspire, a 1000, or a Matrice series? So experience is something that you can't learn in a classroom. Experience is what you have once you get out and actually start flying. And the best way to measure that is in hours when we're talking about the pilot in the aviation world. How many hours do you have on type? Okay. The last thing we go to is the equipment. What type of equipment do you have? Is it a Matrice 200? Or is it a Phantom 3 or a Phantom 2 Vision? That's the question of the equipment. And the equipment is really a case of dollars and cents in most cases. You can have a UAV that is worth well over $100,000 to a UAV that's under $1,000. You could buy one that is in the $100,000 category, but do you have the knowledge and experience to operate that complex of equipment? So there's the balance that we're trying to strike. Do you have the equipment and knowledge and experience all within balance? And if all those items are within balance, you're going to be set to go forward and have a good experience. If one of them is out of balance, you're going to have a problem. If you have a capable piece of equipment, but you're a little bit lacking on experience, there's an imbalance. If you have a very good knowledge and experience, but not so capable of equipment, that is another problem that we're going to have as you go along. So they stay in balance of each other, and as we go forward, let's try to keep that into our thinking, okay? A brief history. Are UAVs anything new? Well, not necessarily. They date back to 1961, where we had the ALM, the Lockheed Martin D-21, which was a drone that was launched off of the SR-71 series, the well-known Blackbird SR-71. And what was their role? Interestingly, strategic reconnaissance, SR. And what do we use drones for today? Mostly strategic reconnaissance. Getting photographs where a customer would like to have photographs from an aerial vantage point, doing surveying, mapping, analysis, volumetrics, and so on and so on and so forth. So the technology dates back a long time. Needless to say, that particular program was not very successful, a little bit before its time, but you get the idea, okay? When we're talking about UAVs and the employment of UAVs professionally through an SFOC program, we're also talking about safety risk management. Everything that we talk about in safety is all about risk management. The bottom line is, no matter what UAV you're flying, how new it may be, there's always a risk something could go wrong. And there's a wide variety of things that can go wrong in an aircraft. And so as professionals, we want to make sure we cover those angles and make sure that we are prepared for that. So we have a strategic risk management system in our operating portfolios and in our operating manuals, which will help and analyze the risk and control the risk once we do see it. And there are some risks that we have to live with, but we'll focus on ways we can mitigate those risks to take them down to a lowest level possible. And there's three main elements of that, which would be hazard identification. Identify the hazard. Make sure you focus and can actually see the hazard. Sometimes they're hidden. Sometimes they're hard to detect. And then we will assess it. Assess the risk. How bad is it? What is the severity if something should go wrong, going wrong? And the consequences or the likelihood of it happening should it happen, and be determined that way. Risk mitigation is the risk is considered to be acceptable. Is it acceptable risk? Right? If your UAV falls out of the sky, is it acceptable? Some might say, well, it is acceptable because it's only a $1,000 drone. It's only a $2,000 drone. I can accept that loss. But as we look into it further, what happens if that drone happened to fall on people and lacerate them or severely injure them? What if that drone fell on a dry wooded area and started a forest fire? So different risk mitigations, something we need to think about after we're employing the technology and assessing that in our safety checklists and in our operational procedures. Our SOPs, our standard operating procedures. An example of a safety risk analysis would be the following. A DJI Phantom has a very different risk factor than that of a DJI Inspire. I've flown both aircraft, extensive hours on both. I would say the DJI could lacerate you, bruise somebody, more likely than not, if it were to contact them. The DJI Inspire could severely injure somebody, severely lacerate them, and potentially kill them. Would be the difference in risk analysis between two common aircraft platforms that you're using. And then to go to another extreme, this aircraft here would be very minimal. I was using this. If this ran into somebody, maybe annoy them or a paper cut or something like that. But I don't know if it went into their eye and it didn't have blade guards on, it may be a bit worse, but likely very minimal with a light drone. So the UAV piloting command must be able to recognize the different levels of risks in strategic risk management system, okay? Air law, or the acronym would be CARS, Canadian Aviation Regulations, is a very extensive study, but in this course we'll try to focus on the basics, which are the following, as you can see before you. The new one is the RPAS Task Force. Transport Canada has a designated task force to deal with RPAS, remotely piloted aircraft systems. That is in place right now, and they are working with stakeholders and everybody involved as they roll out new regulations to regulate UAVs, to regulate and integrate UAVs into the Canadian airspace system. How is that going to look like? What is that going to look like in the next 5 years? In the next 10 years, what's it going to look like? And that is where the government gets in and wants to regulate this for very good reason. But the couple points of government would be as follows. We have NAV Canada, we have the Canadian Aviation Regulatory Advisory Council, we have the Transport Canada Canadian Aviation Regulatory Committee, and then we have the Transport Canada inspectors themselves. And when students are first starting out on SFOC plans, they likely will be issued or designated a Transport Canada inspector, and they will work with them as they go through the process. Okay. Another level of government we have, it would be local law enforcement. Police and any other peace officer would certainly be in a position to enforce the law and regulations and make sure that the safety is looked after to the public. And that is, again, our number one goal in all of this is safety. Safety for people, the public, and ourselves. We do not want UAVs becoming a threat to a point where we could see major accidents happen. And so we all have to be part of the team effort to make sure that this doesn't happen as we roll out the technology. So you bought a drone. You bought it online at Best Buy. And the next immediate question is, where can I fly it? Where can I go? And so just to illustrate the point, the image you see here on the screen is all showing the restricted areas that a drone may be operated. So as you can see, Victoria before you, just at the southern bottom section, and then as you head north, you get into Victoria Airport area. And then all around there, it's all in red. And so the short answer of to the question is there is very limited areas where you can operate your UAV or your drone legally and safely, because these are air traffic corridors. These are control zones. These are areas where there are manned aircraft flying around, and it is an unacceptable risk factor that the UAVs and drones can get in the way of manned aircraft, and for good reason. When any of us are flying or landing, doing a commute within BC or within Canada, as you come in for an approach on your commuter jet or your turboprop, and you descend below 1,000 feet, we cannot accept the reality or the risk that it's possible you're going to fly into a drone on your way down as you descend below 1,000 feet or below 2,000 feet. So what it is it's an unacceptable risk factor from the aviation world that UAVs get in the way or could risk a collision type situation. And so this is where we see the rules happening. So at the end of the day, they do not want any unregulated UAV flight activity in any of those zones. And so the answer is very few areas, but you can buy it very easily, but you cannot fly it very easily, as we can see. Okay, so this course will show us how we can be certified And so how we can fly right actually next to an airport, once you get certified, you'll have the capability of doing that. And that is what the goal of this course is to get people certified to operate in complex airspaces. You've probably seen charts like this. Are you flying for fun? Are you flying for recreation? What can you do? What can't you do? There you have it, right? Never higher than 90 meters above the ground. Never closer than 75 meters from buildings, vehicles, vessels, animals, peoples, and crowds. And that's a big one when we're talking about being away from vehicles. It's very, very restrictive to fly UAVs recreational in Canada. And it's just going to get even more difficult. Okay. Another flow chart, simply trying to divide recreational operations to commercial operations. Are you certified? No. Then this is the only thing you can do over here. Are you certified? Then this is the process that you have to go through here.